Hi guys, so this is my podcast. My name is Luke and I am a senior at Smith High School East, and I'm graduating in 2 weeks. I know it's hard to believe, but this is my senior project and it is about the Second Amendment and gun control, and more specifically about gun violence in not only in schools but just mass shootings in general. So enjoy. In the United States alone, there has been 23,000 total number of incidents related to gun violence in 2019. There was 6,062 total deaths and over 11,000 injuries. The number of children aged 0 to 11 that were either killed and injured by a gun was 253, and the number of teens aged 12 to 17 that were killed and injured was 1,154. There's been 157 mass shootings and 133 officers that have been involved in an incident where the officer was shot or killed. And in all of those, and in 2019 alone, there has been 747 reports of a home invasion and only 600 times that guns were used in defense. The rest of the incidents were not, the guns were not used in defense or in a deadly situation where the person felt like their gun had to be used. So as you can see from these numbers, gun violence in America is only growing, and if people don't do anything to stop it or try and change it, then gun violence in the future could even be more prominent in society than it already is. Personally, I became really interested in the topic of gun violence after the Columbine shooting. A lot of people don't know this about me, but my aunt was actually in the shooting in Columbine. She is a social worker at Columbine High School, but luckily during the time of the shooting, she was actually doing a house visit, so she wasn't in harm's way. But since she is a social worker, she met with the families for years on years, and she still meets with the families because they're still mourning the loss of their children in the shooting. So my aunt has been a strong advocate for more gun regulation. From her personal experience as a social worker, she realizes and sees every day the result that a mass shooting like a school shooting could have on a society or a family, and that is really what sparked my interest in this topic. More recently, we had the Parkland shooting in Parkland, Florida at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, where I believe it was 17 kids were shot and killed, and that was one of the most deadly shootings to date. And more specific, at the time, the kids were my age, so it really left an impact on my life and really got me interested in the topic. And I just wish that as a country we could find a way to end gun violence, however it may be. So for my senior project, I decided to go around and interview students and ask them a couple questions about the Second Amendment and gun control, and just to get a just to find out what people's political opinions are in regards to gun control, because as people can guess, the younger generation is eventually going to become the future. And even though a lot of us aren't old enough to vote yet, in a couple years we will be the majority of society, and we can completely change how society runs things with. So since we are the generation that has constantly been attacked by people with guns, such as in school shootings and concerts, I really want to get to know people's opinions and just figure out whether or not they feel safe in school, and whether or not they believe that there should be more regulations on gun, less regulations, or think that the gun regulations is fine the way it is, and that we should find out how to solve gun violence a different way, such as like mental health and other forms of stopping gun violence rather than just regulating guns. Good evening, everyone. Um, as you guys know, I'm Luke Schultz, and today I will be interviewing.
Elena?
State your name for the address.
Elena?
I'll be interviewing Elena Johnson on her views about the Second Amendment and gun control in New York State. So the first question I have for you, Elena, is, do you think that guns do more harm than good?
I think they can be good for the topic of defense, but I think that's can often be abused and and then people go out hurting other people.
Since you are a student here at Smithtown High School East, do you ever feel like there was a moment where you were scared to go to school or felt unsafe inside school?
I think anytime it was right after a mass shooting or something, it does feel a little eerie. But I trust our security and our teachers to keep us safe.
And my last question for you is, do you feel if the school had any armed security officers who will be armed with a gun, would you feel safer? Or if the school had a gun somewhere in the school, would you feel safer or scared?
If there was guns in the school for our protection, I think it depends on who has it and how often the training is for that, and I think I would feel it depends on the situation and who has it and how it's being used, because there is obviously a chance that it could be those can be abused and stuff like that, and I'd hate to see that. Yeah.
That's all we have for Elena. Round of applause. So here in the podcast, I realized that I never stated my own political opinion on the Second Amendment. So Elena is now going to be interviewing me on my opinion. Take it away.
So, Luke, Christopher, George, Schultz, do you think this world would be safer with more guns?
I do feel that I don't feel that the world will be safer with more guns. I feel like guns regulation is fine the way it is now. I know that sometimes guns could be abused and people could do very atrocious acts with guns, but I don't feel like it's the gun's fault rather than mental health and the person who carried out the shootings' fault.
So you said that you think gun regulation is fine now, so there's nothing you would change about it?
There's nothing I would change about it in New York because I am a citizen of New York. And in other states, I feel like it should be up to the states because every state is completely different. Like New York should have very different gun regulation than Texas because in Texas, police stations are much further away from other houses, so people have to rely on themselves to defend their family and friends. So I do feel like in other states, it should be up to states because every state is just so different in regards to safety and the type of other people that are out there.
Would you feel safer if there was a gun in school held by a security guard?
In Smithtown, I don't feel like a gun in school would make it any safer. I feel like Smithtown is very safe by itself. But I do understand if other schools in the local area or in other states, if they want to have a gun, I think that it should be up to the people of that community to vote on whether or not a gun should be allowed in that school. So, for example, in Brentwood, I know there's a lot of gang violence. So if a school felt like that they need a gun, I think that the school should be able to have a gun in the school or have some of their officers armed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elena. Hello. We now have, state your name for the address. Erin McDonald, a student at Smithtown East, and I'm going to be interviewing her about her views on the Second Amendment and gun control. So, my first question to you, Erin. Do you think guns do more harm than good?
I think they do more harm than they do
Wait, can you provide a little tiny explanation?
good. I don't know. They just do.
Because you don't feel like there's a use for it, I guess,
Yeah.
right? All right. So now, my second question is, do you feel safe in school, especially with the whole the recent school shootings that's been happening and other mass shootings?
No, not at all.
Not at all. And would you feel that if either faculty or armed security officer had a gun on them in school, would you feel safer?
No.
Why not?
I just think it's wrong to put it in the hands of our administrators.
And you feel like maybe a student could get a hand of it and then cause more destruction?
Yes.
We now have Kyle Buff, another senior at Smithtown East. So Kyle, I have a couple questions for you about gun control. So, do you feel like guns do more harm than good?
Depends.
Please elaborate.
Depends on the circumstance. For defense, I think it's a good idea, but I think in society, it's too easy for people to get guns, and I don't like that.
So you think that there should be tighter, in other words, you think there should be tighter regulation, but still have guns, still have people legally allowed to obtain guns. Now, for my second question for you, do you feel safe in school with the whole recent mass shootings and school shootings?
Yes.
And do you think that if administrators and faculty or the security guards at Smithtown East had guns on them, would you feel safer?
No, I would feel less safe.
And why is that?
I feel like it's so easy for kids to cheat in school. I feel like it'd be even easier for them to find the gun and wreak havoc.
All right, but do you think that in others, maybe other schools in the local area or other states might need guns, such as schools in Texas or high crime areas such as Brentwood?
I think there's no need for guns in school. I think we're safe enough. And if there's a problem, I think a metal detector and other securities will help solve any problems we have.
All right, thank you, Kyle.
Rana is
We now have Elizabeth Levshy, a senior at Smithtown East. And I'm going to ask you a couple questions, Elizabeth, about gun control. So, do you think... Sorry, we have another interviewing being a little annoying. Do you think that guns do more harm than good?
Yes.
Can you give me a little explanation?
Well, they're good in like warfare, protection, security, police, whatever you need it for. But in like actual residential use, it is not like, it does way more harm than good, as proven so far.
All right, so your next question is, do you feel safe in school?
Currently?
Do you feel safe in school with all the other mass shootings going on and school shootings?
I personally feel safe in our school because we have a lot of security and we don't live in a neighborhood that's like dangerous, and like I feel safe based on like the security measures we have, but I can understand how other kids don't feel safe in like less high security schools with like open campuses and whatnot.
So in other schools that you mentioned that aren't as safe as Smithtown, do you think that they should be allowed to have faculty or armed security officers be armed?
No, definitely not, because if there's a kid in that school or someone that's targeting that school that's trying to like cause harm with a like gun, mass weapon, whatever, they could easily just go into the school and take that gun and do the same damage that they already intended to do, and like that's not a safe environment for learning, especially with like kids at this age, so it wouldn't be like protective, it would be more harmful.
You hear that, folks? That's all for today. So that's all for my podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed and maybe learned different statistics. So in conclusion, after my interviews with all different students from Smithtown East, almost every single student I talked to believed that we needed more regulation of gun control, and then guns in schools wouldn't be a good idea. But on the other hand, a little positive note is that almost all of them said that they feel safe in Smithtown East, mainly because our school has a lot of security protocol and we live in a good neighborhood. So hopefully other schools around the country could have some of the same safety protocols, and maybe some of their students will feel safer, and that would just really enhance the education environment for all students. Thank you for listening and watching my podcast, and I hope you enjoyed it.